Welcome to the family. If you enjoy powerful stories and wild adventures, subscribe now, hit like and share with someone who will love it too. The maintenance shaft on level 47 of the Galactic Trade Station was supposed to be empty. Tom had double-checked the work schedules before crawling into the cramped space to repair the atmospheric recycling unit. The last thing he expected was to bump into someone else in the narrow passage. "Sorry, I didn't know anyone was—" Tom's words died in his throat as the figure in front of him turned around. It was Maya, the quiet communications officer from the human diplomatic quarter. Her uniform jacket hung loose around her shoulders, and in the dim emergency lighting, he could see something that made his breath catch. A scar ran from her left shoulder blade down to her ribcage, but it wasn't just any scar. The pattern was too precise, too deliberate. It looked almost like circuitry etched into flesh, with tiny metallic threads visible beneath her skin. Maya's eyes widened in panic as she realized what he'd seen. She quickly pulled her jacket closed, her face flushing with a mixture of embarrassment and fear. "Tom, I can explain. That's not a human scar," he said quietly, his engineering mind already analyzing what he'd witnessed. "Those are neural interface patterns, but they're not from any human technology I've ever seen." The space between them seemed to shrink as Maya backed against the wall. For 3 years, she'd worked alongside humans on the station, carefully maintaining her cover. She'd learned their mannerisms, their speech patterns, their customs. She'd even grown fond of many of them, especially Tom, whose kind nature and brilliant technical mind had drawn her attention from the beginning. "Please," she whispered, "you don't understand what this means." Tom studied her face in the emergency lighting. Maya had always been different, too quick with calculations, too perceptive about technical problems, too good at languages. He'd attributed it to exceptional human talent, but now the pieces were falling into place. "You're not human," he said, and it wasn't a question. Maya's shoulders sagged in defeat. "No, I'm not." The atmospheric recycler hummed around them, a steady reminder of the delicate balance that kept thousands of beings alive on the station. Tom's mind raced through the implications. If Maya wasn't human, what was she? Why was she here? And more importantly, what did this mean for the fragile peace between species that the station represented? "What are you?" he asked gently. Maya looked at him for a long moment, searching his face for signs of hostility or fear. Instead, she found only curiosity and something that looked almost like concern. "I'm Altrian," she said finally. "My people. We've been watching humanity for some time." The name meant nothing to Tom, but the weight of her confession hung heavy in the air. Altrians weren't part of the Galactic Council. They weren't even supposed to exist according to the official records. "Watching us? Why?" "Because you're different," Maya said, her voice barely above a whisper. "Humans do things that shouldn't be possible. You survive situations that would destroy other species. You adapt, you innovate, you refuse to give up even when logic says you should." Tom's hand instinctively moved toward the toolkit at his belt, not in threat, but in nervous habit. "And you're here to study us?" "I was," Maya admitted, "but something changed. The more time I spent among humans, the more I realized that my people's understanding was incomplete." The maintenance shaft suddenly felt even smaller, charged with the weight of secrets and the possibility of discovery. Tom realized that this moment would change everything, not just for him and Maya, but potentially for both their species. The next few hours passed in a blur of careful maneuvering back to Maya's quarters. Tom's mind buzzed with questions, but he waited until they were safely behind the privacy screens of her modest living space before speaking. "How long?" he asked simply. Maya sat heavily on her small couch, finally allowing her careful human posture to relax. As she did, Tom noticed other subtle differences. The way she moved was too fluid, too precise. Her breathing pattern was slightly off. Even her blinks seemed timed differently. 4 years total, 3 years on this station. She looked down at her hands. "I was supposed to be here for 6 months, gather basic intelligence, and return to my home world. But you stayed. I couldn't leave." The words came out rushed, as if she'd been holding them back for years. "Tom, everything my people believed about humans was wrong. We thought you were primitive, chaotic, driven purely by emotion and base instincts. Tom couldn't help but smile wryly. Sounds about right, honestly. Maya shook her head vigorously. No, that's just it. Yes, humans are emotional, but you use that emotion as fuel. When an Altrian faces an impossible situation, we calculate the odds, accept defeat when logic dictates it, and minimize losses. But humans look at impossible odds and get angry. You get stubborn. You find solutions that don't exist in any database. She stood and began pacing, her movements betraying her alien nature now that she wasn't consciously mimicking human behavior. Do you know what happened in the Kepler mining disaster last year? Tom nodded. The story had become legend throughout human space. A mining station had suffered catastrophic failure, trapping 200 workers in a collapsing asteroid facility. The rescue ships couldn't reach them in time, and the station's life support was failing. The Galactic Council wrote them off. Maya continued. Every species ran the calculations. The energy required for a rescue exceeded what was available. The asteroid was too unstable for conventional extraction. By all logical measures, those miners were dead. But Captain Ross didn't accept that, Tom said, beginning to understand where this was leading. Captain Ross took a damaged freighter, stripped it down to its core systems, and used it as a battering ram to punch through the asteroid's weak point. She traded her ship's life support to boost the miners' air supply and somehow managed to get everyone out alive. The math said it was impossible. The physics said it couldn't work. But humans don't care about impossible. Maya stopped pacing and looked directly at Tom. That's when I knew my mission had changed. I wasn't just studying humans anymore. I was trying to understand how you do it, how you consistently achieve the impossible. Tom leaned back in his chair, processing this revelation. And what did you find? That it's not just stubbornness or luck. Humans have something my people lost long ago. Hope. Not the naive kind, but hope backed by action. When you believe something can be done, you start working toward it even before you know how it's possible. The implications of Maya's words struck Tom like a physical blow. If she was right, if humans truly had some unique quality that other species lacked, then her presence here represented far more than simple espionage. Your people sent you to learn our secrets, he said slowly. Maya nodded. The Altrian High Command believes that if they can understand and replicate human adaptability, they can solve problems that have plagued our civilization for centuries. Our population is declining. Our technology has stagnated. We've become too logical, too predictable, but you don't want to help them anymore. I want to help them, Maya said firmly, but not the way they intended. Tom, if my people try to steal human ingenuity through technology or genetic manipulation, they'll destroy the very thing that makes it work. You can't bottle hope. You can't program stubbornness into a computer. Tom stood and moved closer to her. So what do you want to do? Maya's expression grew determined. I want to propose something that's never been done before. Something that will probably get me executed as a traitor by my own people and branded as an enemy agent by yours. I'm listening. I want to forge a real alliance, not the careful, limited partnerships that exist in the Galactic Council, but something deeper. Humans need guidance in areas where logic and calculation matter. Altrians need to remember how to dream and fight for those dreams. Tom felt a familiar sensation, the spark of an impossible idea taking root. Maya was right about humans. When faced with the impossible, they didn't calculate odds. They got to work. Your people are going to come looking for you eventually, he said. Maya nodded grimly. My handler expects a report within the next standard week. If I don't provide one, they'll send a retrieval team. Then we need to work fast. Tom's engineering mind was already spinning up solutions. And we're going to need help. The next morning found Tom in the station's central hub, nursing a cup of coffee that had long since gone cold. He watched the morning shift change with new eyes, seeing patterns he'd never noticed before. Maya's revelation had shifted his entire perspective on the delicate ecosystem of species that called the station home. You look like someone who didn't sleep, a familiar voice said behind him. Tom turned to find Dr. Elena Vasquez settling into the chair across from him. The station's chief medical officer had always been perceptive, but her knowing look made Tom wonder just how much she'd already figured out. "Rough night," he said carefully. Elena studied him over her own coffee cup. "Would this have anything to do with the anomalous readings I've been getting from the human quarters?" Tom's hand stopped halfway to his mouth. Anomalous readings. Biometric scanners have been picking up some interesting data. Heart rate spikes, stress hormones, altered sleep patterns, all from the same section where our communications officer lives. Elena's voice remained conversational, but her eyes were sharp. Of course, equipment malfunctions happen all the time. Sometimes the scanners pick up readings that don't quite match human baselines. The implication hung in the air between them. Tom realized that Elena had known about Maya, or at least suspected for some time. "How long have you known?" he asked quietly. "Known is a strong word." "Suspected?" "About 6 months. Maya's physiology is remarkable, almost perfectly human, but there are subtle differences. Reaction times, healing rates, neural activity patterns." Elena leaned forward. "The question is, what are we going to do about it?" Before Tom could answer, another voice joined the conversation. "Mind if I sit?" Commander Jack Rivera, the station's security chief, pulled up a chair without waiting for permission. His expression was grim, but not hostile. "We need to talk," Rivera said. "All of us." Tom felt his heart rate spike. Had they been discovered? Was this the end before they'd even begun? Rivera must have noticed his expression because he held up a placating hand. "Relax. I'm not here to arrest anyone, but we have a problem." Eleanor and Tom exchanged glances. "What kind of problem?" Eleanor asked. "The kind where a coded transmission went out from the station last night, directed at coordinates that don't match any known human or council worlds," Rivera said. "The transmission was traced back to the communications array, but there's no record of it in the official logs." Tom's blood ran cold. "Maya's handler." "There's more," Rivera continued. "Long-range sensors detected a ship dropping out of hyperspace at the edge of the system. It's running dark, but it's there. Estimated arrival at the station, 4 days." Elena set down her coffee cup with deliberate care. "Jack, what exactly are you suggesting?" Rivera looked around the busy hub, ensuring they couldn't be overheard. "I'm suggesting that whatever's happening with our communications officer just became a station security issue. And I'm suggesting that the three of us need to have a very frank conversation about what we're dealing with." Tom made a decision. That would have seemed impossible just 24 hours earlier. "We need to include Maya in this conversation." Rivera's eyebrows rose. "The subject of our investigation?" "The person who might be the key to preventing an interstellar incident," Tom corrected. "Elena, you said her physiology was almost perfectly human. What if that's not an accident? What if she's been deliberately engineered to blend in?" "Genetic modification on that scale would require incredibly advanced biotechnology," Elena mused. "More advanced than anything in the council databases." Rivera's expression shifted from suspicion to calculation. "You're talking about a species with capabilities beyond what we've encountered before. A species that's been operating covertly in human space. A species that's about to make contact whether we're ready or not," Tom added. "The question is, do we treat this as a first contact situation or a security threat?" Elena stood abruptly. "There's a third option. We treat it as an opportunity." Both men looked at her in surprise. "Think about it," she continued. "Maya has been living among humans for years without detection. She's learned our ways, our languages, our customs. If her people have that kind of adaptive capability, imagine what we could learn from each other." Rivera remained skeptical. "Or imagine what kind of threat they represent. A species that can infiltrate us so completely. Could also be our greatest ally," Tom finished. "Commander, what if I told you that Maya wants to help us? That she's willing to risk her life to prevent her people from taking a more aggressive approach?" Rivera studied Tom's face for a long moment. "I'd say you've been talking to her about things that could get you court-martialed for unauthorized contact with a potential enemy agent. And I'd say that sometimes the right thing to do isn't the same as the legal thing to do," Tom replied. The three of them sat in silence for a moment, the weight of their decision hanging over them. Finally, Rivera spoke. "Where is she now?" Probably trying to figure out how to warn us about what's coming, Tom said. Rivera nodded slowly. Then I suggest we go find her before her people do. Maya sat in her quarters, staring at the encoded message that had appeared on her personal communicator an hour ago. The symbols were unmistakably Altrian, and the meaning was clear. Her extraction was imminent. Agent designation M7734. Your extended mission parameters have been exceeded. Prepare for immediate retrieval. Maintain cover protocols until contact is established. Do not attempt to communicate with local subjects regarding your true nature. Violation of this directive will result in permanent sanction. The message was signed with the seal of High Commander Taylor, head of the Altrian Intelligence Division. Maya had served under Taylor for 15 years before accepting this assignment. She knew exactly what permanent sanction meant. A soft chime at her door interrupted her thoughts. Maya quickly deleted the message and composed herself, falling back into her carefully practiced human mannerisms. "Come in," she called. To her surprise, Tom entered, followed by 3 other humans she recognized: Dr. Vasquez, Commander Rivera, and Captain Lisa Park, the station commander herself. Maya's heart sank as she realized her cover had been completely blown. "Hello, Maya," Captain Park said gently. "Or should I say Agent M7734? Maya's hand moved instinctively toward the neural disruptor concealed in her sleeve, but Tom stepped forward. "They're here to help," he said quickly. "We intercepted the transmission." Maya's trained composure cracked. "You intercepted? How is that possible?" "Altrian encryption is mathematically unbreakable," Dr. Vasquez smiled. "Only if you assume the recipients are following standard mathematical principles. Human cryptographers tend to think outside conventional parameters." "Commander." Rivera pulled up a chair. "We need to know what's coming, Agent. The ship that's approaching the station, what are their intentions?" Maya looked around the room, realizing she was faced with the decision she'd been dreading for months. Tell the truth and risk everything, or maintain her cover and watch as 2 civilizations potentially stumbled toward conflict. "They're coming to retrieve me," she said finally, "and to assess whether humanity represents a threat that needs to be managed." Captain Park's expression remained neutral, but Maya caught the slight tightening around her eyes. "Managed how?" "The Altrian High Command has 3 standard protocols for dealing with emerging civilizations: incorporation, peaceful absorption into our sphere of influence, isolation, containment within predetermined boundaries, or, Tom prompted. "Elimination," Maya finished quietly. "If a species is deemed too unpredictable or dangerous to coexist with established galactic order." The room fell silent. Finally, Commander Rivera spoke. "What would it take for them to choose the first option?" Maya turned to Tom. "That's what I was trying to figure out when you found me yesterday. Traditional Altrian thinking says humans are too chaotic, too unpredictable. But what if we could demonstrate that chaos and unpredictability are actually strengths?" Dr. Vasquez leaned forward. "You're talking about a controlled first contact scenario." "More than that," Maya said, her voice gaining strength. "I'm talking about proving that humans and Altrians can work together to solve problems that neither species could handle alone." Captain Park stood and began pacing. "What kind of problems?" Maya accessed her communicator and projected a holographic display. The image showed a star system with multiple worlds, but something was clearly wrong. One of the planets was surrounded by an expanding energy field that pulsed with dangerous colors. "This is the Kepler 442 system," Maya explained. "The 4th planet, Kepler 442d, is home to over 3 billion sentient beings from multiple species. 6 months ago, an automated mining operation accidentally breached what we now know was an ancient alien artifact." Tom studied the display. "That energy field, it's growing, at a rate of approximately 1,000 kilometers per day. If it reaches the planet's surface, it will sterilize all life. If it continues expanding, it will eventually consume the entire system." Dr. Vasquez asked the obvious question. "What have the Altrians tried?" "Everything we can think of. Energy dampening fields, matter displacement, even attempting to relocate the entire population. Nothing works. The artifact appears to be designed to resist any direct technological intervention. Commander Rivera crossed his arms. And you think humans might have a solution? I think humans might approach the problem differently, Maya corrected. Altrian thinking is methodical, logical, systematic. We analyze a problem, develop a solution, and implement it. But what if the artifact isn't meant to be solved logically? Tom was already following her reasoning. You're thinking it might require an intuitive approach, something that doesn't follow predictable patterns, Maya nodded. The artifact predates any known civilization by millions of years. Whoever built it might have thought very differently than modern species. They might have been more like humans, Captain Park finished. The implications hung in the air. If Maya was right, if this was genuinely a problem that required human-style thinking to solve, then it represented an unprecedented opportunity to demonstrate the value of human-Altrian cooperation. There's just one problem, Maya continued. The retrieval ship arriving in 4 days isn't equipped for a rescue mission. It's a small diplomatic vessel with orders to bring me home for debriefing and then recommend a classification for humanity. Captain E. Park turned to face her senior staff. How long would it take to prep the Phoenix for departure? Commander Rivera blinked in surprise. The Phoenix? Captain, that's our fastest deep space vessel, but it's not designed for missions of this magnitude. It's designed for exactly this type of mission, Park corrected. Unknown situations requiring adaptability and improvisation. How long? 18 hours if we push it, Rivera replied. Tom felt that familiar spark of impossible possibility igniting in his chest. Captain, are you suggesting we beat the Altrians to Kepler 442? Park's smile was predatory. I'm suggesting we show them what humans do when faced with impossible odds. Maya, will your people follow us if we leave before they arrive? Maya considered this. They'll have to if I'm not here when they arrive, and if they detect that a human vessel has departed for a classified Altrian operation zone, they'll assume we've kidnapped you, Dr. Vasquez said. Which means they'll come after us, Tom added, with both species working together to solve the crisis. Maya stared at them in amazement. You're talking about forcing a first contact situation in the middle of a galactic emergency. Captain Park nodded. Can you think of a better way to prove that our species belong on the same side? The Phoenix launched from the station exactly 17 hours and 32 minutes later, her cargo bays packed with equipment that any sane engineer would have declared incompatible. Tom had personally overseen the loading of everything, from quantum resonance scanners to what appeared to be a collection of antique human musical instruments. Explain to me again why we need a violin, Commander Rivera said as he watched the final systems checks. Maya, now wearing a modified human uniform that accommodated her unique physiology, answered without looking up from her console. Because we don't know what kind of interface the artifact uses. Human music operates on mathematical principles, but it also incorporates emotional and intuitive elements that pure mathematics can't capture. Dr. Vasquez nodded from the medical station. It's not entirely illogical. If the artifact builders thought differently than modern species, they might have used sensory inputs we haven't considered. Captain Park's voice crackled over the comm system. All stations report ready. Maya, what's our window before your people realize we're gone? They'll know within 6 hours of arrival that I'm not on the station, Maya replied. Commander Rivera's people did an excellent job creating false biosignatures in my quarters, but Altrian sensors are quite sophisticated. Tom plotted their course on the navigation display. Hyperspace jump to Kepler 442 will take 47 hours. That gives us maybe 18 hours on site before they catch up. 18 hours to solve a problem that stumped one of the galaxy's most advanced civilizations for 6 months, Rivera muttered. No pressure. The jump to hyperspace was smoother than expected, giving the crew time to study the data Maya had provided about the artifact. The more Tom learned, the more convinced. He became that traditional approaches had failed because they were too traditional. Look at this energy pattern, he said, projecting the artifact's readings onto the main display. It's not random, but it's not following any known mathematical sequence either. Maya joined him at the display. Our best scientists have tried to map it using 17 different analytical models. Nothing produces a coherent pattern. Dr. Vasquez, who had been quietly reviewing the data, suddenly sat up straighter. Maya, has anyone tried analyzing this as a biological pattern instead of a technological one? Biological? The artifact is clearly artificial. Artificial, yes, but what if it's based on biological principles? Tom, look at this section here. Vasquez highlighted a portion of the energy field. Those fluctuations, they look almost like a heartbeat pattern. Tom studied the data with fresh eyes. You're right. And this section here, if you adjust the scale, it resembles neural activity patterns. Maya stared at the display in amazement. You're suggesting the artifact isn't just a machine, it's designed to mimic living processes, which would explain why technological solutions haven't worked, Rivera added, beginning to understand. You can't fix a living system with pure engineering. You have to understand what it needs to be healthy. Captain Park's voice came over the comm again. 6 hours to arrival. How are we doing down there? Tom looked around at his unlikely team. A human engineer, an Altrian infiltrator, a doctor and a security chief, all working together on a problem that had defeated teams of specialists. We're starting to understand what we're dealing with, he replied. But Captain, we're going to need to do something that's never been attempted before. I'm listening. Maya took a deep breath. We're going to have to communicate with the artifact, not through technology, but through empathy. The silence that followed was broken by Rivera's incredulous laugh. You want to have a conversation with an ancient alien machine, with an ancient alien mind, Maya corrected. Tom's right about humans having qualities other species lack, but it's not just stubbornness or creativity. Humans have an ability to form emotional connections with almost anything. Other species, machines, even abstract concepts. Dr. Vasquez nodded slowly. Anthropomorphization. Humans instinctively attribute consciousness and emotion to non-living things, which every other species considers a primitive cognitive bias, Maya continued. But what if it's actually an advanced form of communication? What if the artifact builders expected anyone who found their technology to approach it as a living entity rather than a machine? Tom felt the pieces clicking together in his mind. The energy field isn't expanding randomly, it's trying to communicate. It's been trying to get someone's attention for 6 months, and everyone's been treating it like a malfunction instead of a cry for help. Rivera shook his head in amazement. So, our plan is to... what? Talk to it. Our plan is to listen to it, Tom corrected, and then respond in a way that shows we understand it's alive. As if on cue, the ship's proximity alarms began sounding. They had arrived at Kepler 442, and the energy field surrounding the fourth planet was even more massive than the data had suggested. But as Tom studied the real-time readings, he could see it now. The subtle patterns that suggested not malfunction but distress. Captain, he called over the comm, we need to get as close to that field as possible. Tom, that energy signature could fry our systems. It could, Tom agreed, but it won't. Because it's not trying to hurt anyone, it's trying to find someone who can understand what it's saying. The Phoenix began its approach to the most dangerous communication attempt in galactic history. The Phoenix hung in space 3,000 kilometers from the energy field, close enough that the artifact's emanations were interfering with half their systems. Tom stood at the primary console, watching readings that defied every principle of physics he'd ever learned. The field is responding to our presence, Maya reported, her voice tight with concentration. Energy patterns are shifting, becoming more complex. Dr. Vasquez monitored the biological scanners she'd rigged to detect life signs within the energy matrix. There's definitely something alive in there, multiple somethings actually. The readings suggest a collective consciousness. Commander. Rivera kept one eye on tactical sensors. Still no sign of the Altrian retrieval ship, but they'll be here soon. Tom studied the pattern of energy fluctuations, trying to see past the chaos to the underlying message. Maya was right. This wasn't random. It was structured, purposeful, but unlike any language or code he'd ever encountered. Maya, he said suddenly, you mentioned that your people tried energy-dampening fields. What exactly did you try? Maya pulled up the Altrian mission logs. Standard containment protocols. We attempted to create a harmonic interference pattern to neutralize the field's expansion. You tried to shut it up, Tom realized. No wonder it got more agitated. Dr. Vasquez looked up from her console. The biological readings are spiking. Whatever's in there, it's getting more active. Tom made a decision that would have horrified any safety engineer. Captain, I need you to lower our shields. Tom, that's suicide. The energy levels out there won't hurt us if we approach this correctly. Tom turned to Maya. Your people have been treating this as a containment problem, but what if it's a quarantine? Maya's eyes widened as she understood. You think the artifact is trying to protect something? I think the artifact is protecting something. The planet below us has 3 billion inhabitants. What if the energy field isn't expanding to threaten them, but to shield them from something else? Rivera pulled up tactical displays. Shield them. From what? Tom pointed to readings that had been dismissed as background radiation. From that, Maya ran a spectral analysis on those energy signatures. Maya's fingers flew over her console, and then she went very still. Those aren't natural radiation patterns. They're weapons signatures, ancient ones, but definitely designed for planetary sterilization. The implications hit everyone simultaneously. The artifact wasn't malfunctioning. It was working exactly as designed, protecting the planet from some ancient automated weapon system that was still active after millions of years. But why is it expanding? Dr. Vasquez asked. Tom was already working through the problem. Because it's running out of power. The field has been maintaining this protection for who knows how long, and now it's failing. It's expanding because it's trying to find a new power source. Or someone who can help it, Maya added quietly. Tom, what if the artifact builders designed it to seek assistance when it couldn't maintain protection on its own? Captain Park's voice crackled over the comm. Whatever you're planning, do it fast. I'm detecting hyperspace signatures on approach. Multiple ships. Rivera's tactical display lit up with incoming contacts. That's not just the Altrian retrieval. Ship. That's a full diplomatic fleet. Maya paled. They brought the High Command. Tom, if they think humanity has captured me and gained access to classified Altrian intelligence, they'll classify us as a threat, Tom finished. How long do we have? 20 minutes until they drop out of hyperspace, Rivera reported. Tom looked around at his team. Then we have 20 minutes to prove that humans and Altrians can work together to save 3 billion lives. He turned to the communications console and began configuring it in ways that would have violated every safety protocol ever written. Maya, I need you to help me create a communication matrix that combines human intuitive processing with Altrian logical frameworks. That's theoretically impossible, Maya replied, even as she began working alongside him. Good thing humans don't believe in impossible, Dr. Vasquez said with a grin. As they worked, the energy field around the planet continued to pulse with increasing urgency. Tom could feel the artifact's desperation as clearly as if it were calling his name. Whatever ancient intelligence lived within that field, it had been alone for millions of years, maintaining its vigil, protecting species it had never met from a threat they didn't even know existed. Ready, Maya announced. But Tom, this is going to require both of us to interface directly with the communication matrix. The feedback could kill us, Tom finished. I know. But if we don't try, 3 billion people die, and our species never get the chance to work together again. The Altrian fleet dropped out of hyperspace, just as Tom and Maya placed their hands on the interface controls. Energy coursed through both of them as they established contact with the ancient mind guarding Kepler 442. And for the first time in millions of years, the artifact discovered it was no longer alone. The moment Tom and Maya's consciousness touched the artifact's ancient intelligence, both humans and Altrians throughout the system felt it. It wasn't telepathy exactly, but something deeper, a recognition that intelligence could take forms beyond biological or technological boundaries. The artifact's voice, when it finally spoke, resonated not through sound, but through pure understanding. It spoke of eons of solitude, of watching over world after world as species evolved, thrived, and sometimes destroyed themselves. It had been created by a civilization that understood that protection wasn't about walls or weapons, but about fostering. the conditions for life to flourish. I have guarded so long, the consciousness whispered through the interface, but the old weapons wake, and I grow weak. I cannot maintain the shield much longer. Tom felt the artifact's exhaustion as his own. What do you need? Not power, purpose. I was made to protect, but protection requires understanding. The weapons I guard against, they target civilizations that think only of themselves. But when species work together, when they think beyond their own survival, the weapons cannot see them. Maya's understanding blazed through the connection. The artifact isn't just a shield, it's a test. The ancient weapons only target species that haven't learned to cooperate with others. Through the Phoenix's sensors, they could see the Altrian fleet taking defensive positions around the human ship. But instead of hostility, Commander Rivera detected something else in their formation patterns. "Captain," Rivera called out, "the Altrian ships, they're not taking attack positions. They're trying to form a protective formation around us." Maya's voice, strained from the interface connection, carried new hope. "They're reading the same energy signatures we are. They understand what's happening." The artifact's presence in their minds grew stronger. "Show me. Show me that your species can truly work as one." Tom knew instinctively what was needed. Through the communication matrix, he opened his mind to Maya completely, sharing not just his thoughts but his emotions, his memories, his very human way of seeing impossible problems as puzzles waiting to be solved. Maya responded in kind, sharing her Altrian perspective, the logical frameworks, the analytical precision, the deep cultural understanding of balance and harmony that her people had developed over millennia. But the true miracle happened when their joined consciousness reached out to the crews of both human and Altrian ships. Dr. Vasquez felt it first, then Commander Rivera, then Captain Park. One by one, the human crew members felt their minds expand to include Altrian thought patterns. Simultaneously, the Altrian crews experienced something their species hadn't felt for generations: the rush of human emotion, the fierce joy of facing impossible odds, the stubborn refusal to accept defeat. High Commander Taylor, aboard the lead Altrian vessel, felt his analytical mind suddenly flooded with human intuition. For the first time in his career, he understood why humans succeeded where logic said they should fail. It wasn't despite their emotions. It was because of them. Captain Park, her consciousness now enhanced with Altrian analytical capabilities, saw the solution with crystal clarity. All ships, begin harmonic resonance pattern Theta 7. We're going to give the artifact what it needs. The combined fleet moved as one, human intuition guiding Altrian precision, creating an energy pattern that had never existed before. It wasn't human or Altrian. It was something new, something that spoke to the ancient artifact in a language it had been waiting millions of years to hear. "Yes," the artifact's voice sang through their joined minds. "This is what my creators hoped to see. Not one species alone, but many working as one." The energy field around Kepler 442 began to shift, its chaotic expansion transforming into a controlled, purposeful pattern. The ancient weapons that had lurked in the system's outer reaches for millions of years detected the change and began to power down, their programming unable to target a civilization that had transcended individual species boundaries. Tom and Maya, still connected through the interface, felt the artifact's joy as it realized its long vigil was finally coming to an end. Not through failure or destruction, but through the evolution it had been designed to foster. "My creators will be pleased," the artifact communicated. "They seeded the galaxy with guardians like me, hoping that one day the younger races would learn to work together. You are the first to pass the test." As the immediate crisis passed, the joined consciousness of human and Altrian crews began to separate. But the connection didn't disappear entirely. Something fundamental had changed. Both species now carried within them an understanding of how the other thought, felt, and approached problems. High Commander Taylor's voice came over the communication channels, speaking in accented but fluent, human standard. "Captain Park, I believe we have much to discuss." Dr. Vasquez helped disconnect Tom and Maya from the interface, both of them exhausted but exhilarated. "The biological readings from the artifact are stabilizing," she reported. "Whatever you two did, it worked." Maya looked at Tom with new understanding. We didn't just save 3 billion lives. We proved that the barriers between our species are artificial. We're stronger together than we ever were apart. Commander Rivera, still monitoring the tactical situation, shook his head in amazement. 6 hours ago, we were facing potential war between our species. Now we're... what? Allies? Partners, Tom corrected, feeling the rightness of the word. The artifact showed us something important. The universe is vast and dangerous, full of ancient threats and challenges that no single species can handle alone. But together... Captain. Park's voice filled the bridge with quiet satisfaction. Together we can face anything. As the Phoenix and the Altrian fleet began coordinating rescue operations for the planets below, Tom realized that Maya's original mission had succeeded, beyond anyone's wildest expectations. She had indeed learned the secret of human adaptability, but more importantly, she had discovered something neither species had possessed alone, the ability to transcend their individual limitations through genuine cooperation. The scar on Maya's back, the one Tom had discovered by accident in a maintenance shaft, had been just the beginning. It had led to the uncovering of a secret that changed everything, not just for 2 individuals, but for 2 entire civilizations, and the billions of lives they would touch in the years to come. In the end, Maya had never expected that her discovery would be mutual. Humans learned the value of Altrian logic and precision, while Altrians rediscovered the power of hope and emotional connection. Both species emerged from the crisis transformed, carrying within them the seeds of a partnership that would reshape the galaxy. The artifact, its ancient duty finally fulfilled, settled into a stable orbit around Kepler 442, no longer a guardian, but a teacher, ready to share the wisdom of its creators with any species wise enough to approach it with open minds and joined hearts. Tom looked out at the stars, no longer seeing vast empty spaces between worlds, but connections waiting to be made. The universe had just become a much smaller, much more interesting place, and it all began with an accidental glimpse of a scar that revealed the most important secret of all, that differences between species weren't obstacles to overcome, but strengths to be celebrated and shared. The end.